Now let's talk about how to monetize a personal brand in the Dan Koe way, right? There's like three ways that he breaks down. One, learn a skill and sell a skill, right? The second one is this value creator, right? And for my video experience, you can see it, but I'm gonna break it down for our audio people, where it goes from interest to perspective to creation to distribution. So the interest, this is where we're researching, we're learning, we're note taking, to where the perspective, this is where the critical thinking, the open-mindedness, the self-improvement. Then we go into the value creation. Of course, that's the marketing and sales, the writing and thinking, the education and teaching, right? To then distribution, social media, digital tools, leverage and building, right? Something that he said was, research your genuine interests, become an expert in that domain, and share the value with the world. Money will come. Learn a skill, share a skill, teach a skill, value creator, and then there's both. Moose, what way have you leaned in just hearing those options?
Learn a skill is what I was reminded of most recently, because it's the easiest way to continue to innovate yourself. Mm-hmm. Right. And we really pride ourselves on being lifelong learners. That's something that we don't just say. It's really the only way to keep the podcast alive. That's one. And I think even in each of our own individual endeavors, that's a necessary ingredient for growth. Some of the other areas might generate more revenue. I still rely on that. I look at it almost as the fundamentals that keep you grounded. Just keep learning. It's funny, we were out to lunch with a friend today who recently bought a business, and he was just saying how I just try to pretend like I'm the dumbest person in the room at all times. Now, I know I've heard that before, like on other interviews, but it was different hearing it from him because he was really trying to emphasize, I just want to learn. And so I don't pride myself. There's no ego involved in it. I prioritize learning. And that's an important ingredient, man. It's like, if you don't learn, you can't distribute or really share anything new. And you can tell. I don't know if you've ever followed a creator who maybe in the beginning, you were absolutely in love with what they were saying. And then over time, you find like their stuff gets a little stale, or you can almost predict what they're going to say. It becomes repetitive in a sense. And so, not to be judgmental of anyone, but that typically can happen due to a lack of learning. So it's just like staying plugged into a source that can stretch your imagination, that can share new information with you. I got to put emphasis on learning, because not just for the sake of learning new things, I think from what you learn, you can always improve what you've already created as well. So what is it called? Maybe like a second draft, like a 2.0, 3.0 version of something that comes from learning as well.
I've leaned more into the value creator to then go into number 3 of doing both. I liked how you talked about, the interest, perspective, creation, and distribution. That's pretty much my whole personal brand, where I'm just learning some things, giving my spin to it, giving it out to the world, and letting it kind of impact everybody, from people who are just starting to people who've been doing this. People are like, that's just how I've always been. Just add value, and the money will come, the opportunities will come, and they have. But I'm also getting into the learn it and then sell it situation, because I do believe that some people just want an essential location and not go through my whole Instagram, not go through my threads and be like, okay, I know you said it, but where is it? Like, give me this. So even with the AI stuff, now we've packaged it up and put it in one location, but still giving me the freedom that it lets me go into that space and still add more. being the value creator, I do struggle sometimes with the selling the skill, because I'm like, nah, have it all. Have it like I'm just pay attention. But I have to remember that people will pay for access and people will pay for a central location. And that's what they want. It's not even that they'll pay for it. That's what they want. And so I would be doing a disservice if I didn't do that. Going into, the importance of monetizing, he also brought up this model of this, one person business, which I don't believe this takes one person. Okay. He labels it that. I believe it doesn't. Because if we break it down, right, he breaks it down into goals, which is really your brand, problems, which is content, systems, which is the product, and benefits, which is the marketing. You have these components, and this is going to build your one person business. The brand is, what are you leading people towards? Content, what are the roadblocks they will encounter? Product, how can they solve their problems faster? And then marketing, why should they care about your message? I think that is the basics of any personal brand when we're talking about the learn the skill and sell the skill. It's like, hey, brand it, create the content, here's your product, right? And then let's focus on marketing it. But I would love your perspective on the one man business.
This is the one thing that I took a screenshot of instantly and sent over to you. I was like, yo, this is so good, because, there's the cool thing about, I think, entrepreneurship, there's a lot of things you probably never learn something that is completely out of this world that you're like, wow, I had no clue this even existed. I'm sure it happens from time to time. But I think one of my favorite types of learning is to come across something that you do or have done or do parts of, but to see in a simplified and abbreviated way that helps you to know, oh, this is the best order to do it in. For those of you who are listening to this, make sure that you go and actually tap into the video to see that graphic, because that's such an important breakdown of how to make sense of this complicated thing that you call business and brand, etc., and just see it in a set of 4 questions, right? And the first one that stood out to me is the goals. Right. And I talked about the Egypt trip kind of rekindling something, because I saw almost 7x my normal views during the time that I was in Egypt. And I was posting, yeah, you can say they were fun things or different, but not the standard content, but I just saw how much more people were engaged. And it's because I tried to wrap a story around it and tie it to the homecoming, the kind of healing a part of myself that might have been maybe shut down or vacant or muted and put away for so long. I realized from that experience that people want to engage with brands that are going somewhere. And our personal goals in that process is what helps to show the audience, the members, the marketplace, that you are someone who's constantly striving to get to new places. And so the reason why I specifically call introverts out in that process is because it's so easy for us to stay at home, our comfort zone. It's a controlled environment. You can go to the pockets of it that make you feel your best, and you shut out the outside world. But in the process, you forget that you're not doing anything. You're comfortable, but you're becoming stagnant in the process. To constantly put new goals ahead of yourself and bring in, and that's why I also leaned into the learner piece. These are all things that I would hope have done to me and will do the same thing to you, which is ignite that passion to want to go out, explore, do more, set new benchmarks, and show people, hey, here's my next finish line. Here's my next mission. Let me help take you on that journey. So I've noticed that that's the one key ingredient that I can take almost from a business lesson, really specific to the Egypt trip, that I can apply here, is that people want to see you doing things. And simply sitting at home just doesn't cut it.
Okay. Okay, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. I'm gonna counter that because some people do want to see what you do at home. I will say that from a person who stays home, and my stories are lit whenever I do that because I'm showing them behind the scenes. But at the same time, when I look at this model, it's important. The very first thing, and he said it in one of his part of his video, where it's like, when we think about the goal, right? And he says the goal is like, what do you want out of life? Not what does your whole audience wants out of life, because how he looks at it when we're talking about personal brands, your target audience is probably the old you. We look at what do you want out of life, and then what's standing in your way. That's the problem. You're creating content that addresses this problem. This is why when you go on social media, look at it like, yo, is this person talking directly to me? Because you're addressing a legit problem. But the thing about talking about who you were or the old you is that you know language that no one else knows. You know things such as, you know, overthinkers. You know such things like can't lose weight, but you're traveling all the time. You know things that is can't go to sleep because your mind is racing over and over. Like, certain keywords that is like, huh? That'll wake up somebody like, yo, that's me. Why? Because if you went through it, somebody else did. We can go based off some of the stuff that we've learned and everything. It's a different kind of passion and a different kind of work when it's something that we've gone through as well. I look at it more of, how do you monetize the old me? How do we brand the old me? How do we take that and make content into some of the old old obstacles, the ups and the downs of that situation? What did I wish that I had when I was going through it? What kind of products, what kind of service can I really benefit if I go back in those days and I'm going through trying to figure out, for instance, in my situation, how do I grow a brand? Like, what would make this faster? What would make this easier? What would take away some of the stress and some of the task away from it? Figuring out how to deliver that message. What best platform is that? Like, is that YouTube? Is that, Instagram? Is that Threads? Is that, what does that look like, right? Meeting your audience where you were. So how did you receive information back then? How are you open to that? And sometimes we get caught up in, well, I want to talk to the world, right? So you're trying to solve everybody's problems. You're trying to meet everybody's goal. You're trying to create a message for everybody. And it's like, nah, why don't we just start with us? Like, why don't we start with the person who I used to be, or maybe even used to be just 2 weeks ago? I created a really dope system that has completely did amazing in my life. Cool. Do that. And then sell that. Now, granted, we, based off pricing, and Moose, you could probably talk about this. It goes, of course, with the experience and kind of credentials. But at a certain point, if you solve something, people want to know how you solve that. People will pay for the solution. People will pay for it to, be seamless, be, stress-free, I could save time or money. Like, people will pay for that situation. So, like, when we get to that part of, all right, I know the problem. I got the solution. Now let's talk about the pricing. Like 3 steps that you feel that goes through your mind when thinking about pricing.
Yeah, one of the easiest methods really for pricing in general is just taking the average of what does your solution save the average person or the person who goes through that process, or what does it help them to make from a financial standpoint. And so once you start to figure out the average number of money earned or money saved, once your solution is applied, you can easily start with charging a percentage of that. Because think about it. Is it fair that I charge you $25, but I'm helping you to make $250? Yes. Now, for people who are just getting started, you just want to show that your method works. So you can be confident that it works, but can you continue to prove that at scale? And so step 1 is just figuring out what the average range is from a money saved or money earned standpoint. Prove that at scale, and then you can increase your margins there, because as your influence and credibility grows. So I've always looked at pricing. I try to simplify that because I think it is the easiest part. It isn't complicated. Now, there are other layers that come into it down the line. If you have a physical product and your overhead is increasing, then of course you have to account for that, because you don't want to say, well, hey, I can sell it for 25, but what if it costs me 24 to make? It's like, okay, well, hold on. Don't do that, right? You want to obviously give yourself a little bit more of a cushion there. But for just for simple starters, I would say, think about that. Hey, what does your solution help people to make? What does it help them to save? And you can scale from there.
I like that. I like that. And like one final lesson from Dan Koe is like, look at his content. His content is so simple, where we may feel, especially when we get to the marketing side of that model, where it's like, okay, we have to have highly produced content and it has to go and be flashy here and the great production and that whole nine. When you look at his content, it's very simple. It's him sitting at the same place, not too many, not even different camera angles, not even a true zoom in. It's a few cuts because he probably messed up and said and that's it. Maybe a black screen with white lettering. Super simple. Sometimes we just have to make sure the messaging is right and strong enough for people to understand and for people to share, and not necessarily all the rest of the fireworks that we may think content may be about. Is the message strong? Do you know who you're talking to? Are you solving a problem? And that's all we really care about. If your words are strong and know how to story tell, oh, it's game over with the marketing side. People are going to look at that and it's like, okay, I get it. You got to brand yourself. I got to create content. I got to have a product. I have the market, but like, how? What do you mean? And if you go back and you look at that picture, right? And we break it down to where the brand is, what are you leading people towards? Content, what are the roadblocks will they encounter? Product, how can they solve their problems faster? And then marketing, what should they care about their message? So to monetize a brand, that's the formula. It's the formula, people.